Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Board of Education workshop. Today is Wednesday, November 6th, 2024. Time is now, sorry for the train behind me, 7:02 p.m. You could please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
With me this evening, I have board members Ashley Bouillon, Janine Randolph, Sherry McCready Pritchett, Mary Ellen Flaherty Ludwig, and Jasmine Cressy. I also have Dr. Alexandra Estrella and her cabinet and members of her team that will be presenting this evening. And Dr. Estrella?
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us for this board workshop. Three concurring topics that we're going to be discussing that are an extension from our last month's topic. And these topics are not only one to educate the community about the programs that we have in the district, but also tying the conversation to some of the things that we need to take into consideration as we plan forward for the upcoming 2025-26 budget year. The three topics that will be in conversation today are community priorities and going into depth around program and staffing, as well as discussing curricular needs to support the portrait of a graduate. Given the topics and the number of people that we're going to have in some of these cycles, we're going to reorganize the cycles a little bit, and we're going to combine two of the topics together for the sake of time and just to have a robust conversation given the size of the group. So at this time, we're gonna break into two sessions. One will remain in this room, the other will go into the breakout room to my right. I'm gonna ask Ashley, Janine, and Diana, if you don't mind taking the room to my right, and Sherry, Jasmine, and Mary Ellen will remain in this space. Given the size of the group, we are gonna ask the board to rotate or
We'll rotate.
We'll rotate.
you will rotate? Okay,
Because it's
perfect.
streaming.
Okay, no worries. Thank you.
Oh, sorry.
20 minutes,
15 is fine.
15
So
for the entire
15 and then the question.
15 and 15?
They didn't hear.
Thank you, Rob.
Thank you. Oh.
Oh, very good. Okay. Of course, thank you. Thank you.
Good evening.
Evening.
So we wanted to come back to you and just kind of give you an update. What we'll present today is really, like I had shared in the presentation earlier, we had the community town hall in person. We did a survey, following the community town hall. We sent it out. We had almost 80 respondents.
Amazing, really.
Yes, it is. And so the first survey we sent out was, we almost had like 30 or so responses. And then we administered the survey again on site at the Hispanic Heritage event. And so it was in English and in Spanish. And so that night we got an additional almost 35 additional responses. So all in all, we got about 80 responses from that survey. So what we wanted to do was to kind of put together what we heard from the survey, from the community town hall. And then obviously we had the meeting earlier today that had some feedback as well. Oh, sorry. There we go. So I'm going to skip over this slide. This is kind of the budget cycle that you've seen already a couple of times. Now I wanted to get that out so they can see. Oh, it's here.
There it is.
So some of the priorities that we've heard. So this is kind of what I presented before, the priorities for the year. So this is again, just repetition. We're looking at the one-time offsets we got from the city. Special education continues to be a challenge, looking at pathways. And just trying to address our teacher retention and seeing what incentives we can provide for that. But in terms of the feedback that we heard directly from the community, there were a couple of themes that came out. The first one was everybody was pleased that we were offering this opportunity for engagement. You may have also heard from some of the folks that spoke earlier today. So that was something they really liked, the fact that we're reaching out to them earlier, whereas in the past we kind of engaged the public after we had kind of progressed through the budget process. We also heard from them that the teacher retention and recruitment was also something that they wanted us to focus on, just coming from their own experiences. And then also ensuring that there were equitable resource allocation throughout the district to address the different learning needs of our children. So whether it's special ed, multilingual, gifted and talented, sports activities and those types of things. So we heard that from this as well. And also just to kind of keep them engaged in the programming and the budget and how we allocate those resources within the budget, taking into account these one-time sources of funding and how do we come up with a plan to address that. One of the things we're also looking at working with the superintendent is addressing resource allocation and putting a plan, a long-term plan, how we can adequately have resources that are needed in our schools. We know we can't do it in a year, but we're working on putting together a plan and then obviously supporting the diverse needs of our students. So those are some of the highlights. So in terms of kind of looking how each one of those impacts, obviously teacher retention and recruitment. Obviously our goal is to ensure stability in teaching because every time you have the turnover that kind of we heard, it is disruptive to the classroom, the uses of subs. This year, we had a really significant challenge in not beginning the year with a full complement of staff or staff. We hire people and then they leave just before they start. So that did create some instability within the classroom. And then also looking at how we can leverage some of our experienced teachers to improve educational outcomes. And also the more teachers we have that stay with us for a longer period of time, that also adds to that experience. So obviously, some of the solutions we will have to address within this budget is trying to think about what are some competitive compensation packages, what are the things other districts are doing. We also heard about housing initiatives and some partnerships in how can we make housing affordable. We have some teachers are just not coming to Norwalk just because of the cost of living. And how can we collaborate with the city, whether it's housing and development, and how we can have the opportunities to provide affordable housing. Superintendent has been on a couple of sessions. I think we've been on sessions together, superintendent, where we've seen some of these models in other parts of the country. And so we're exploring those opportunities. The other thing we're also looking at is how can we simplify certification and reciprocity agreements? Right now, it's kind of very rigid in terms of somebody coming in from another state, are they certified to practice or to teach in the state, and so looking at how we can do some of those things. So these are some of the things we're gonna be exploring in terms of especially recruiting our teachers. You'll obviously hear more about special education from the colleagues that are gonna come after us. But some of the things we're seeing obviously is just challenges in staffing again, special education, but also looking at what can we do to kind of enhance our vocational pathways for some of our students who may not go to college and looking at other opportunities. And then also addressing some of the needs of our bilingual and multilingual students and providing support services for them so that they can also have the same academic experience within the districts. Obviously, if we accomplish some of these goals, we need to, it'll allow us to address those diversified needs of our students, and also it does give us the opportunity to provide alternatives for our students. So some of the things we're gonna look at are incentives for hiring, looking at how we can attract multilingual and vocational teachers. And then some of the conversations we've actually begun having now is just looking at some partnerships with local organizations in town and how we can partner to provide some of these resources. Again, going back, some of these themes, you'll see that they're recurring, just the equitable access to resources. We have been challenged in the last couple of years. We have a number of schools that offer magnet programs, but due to some of the funding challenges, we haven't been able to provide that magnet a stipend, for lack of a better word, to some of those schools. So they've been challenged with providing those services using their existing student or school-based budget. And so we're looking to see how we can kind of leverage and provide resources to those individuals. We've talked about in the budget and the presentation earlier, we were fortunate for 2 years in a row receiving some one-time fundings from the city that has gone away. But that is actually part of the base of what we need to run our schools. And therefore, how can we put a budget together that recognizes those funds going away? And so I think our focus here again, in terms of impacts to student, is it is important to continue to provide that equal access and material support, making sure that the kids have what they need in their classrooms. But that's continued to be a challenge. So some of the things we're looking at this year is the possibility of reinstating that magnet support that we had. That cost about $2 million in our budget when we did it. This is the second year now that we haven't had that incentive or program for our schools. So we're gonna look at how we can bring that back to our schools, and then just how some of our schools can bridge some of those gaps that are existing. The other thing we heard is just looking at different ways of providing educational support in our schools, looking at co-teaching models in elementary schools, accessing after-school programs. I think you kind of heard that today with the pre-K needs as well within our community. But then also, how can we also adequately support some of our dual multilingual students in our classrooms? So some of the things we're going to be looking at is just looking at different opportunities to allocate resources, whether it's exploring grants, looking at what are some other co-teaching models that exist around the country, and to see how we can kind of leverage this in our district. The other thing that also came up with this whole issue of transportation, how can we get students around the district, and explore the possibility of collaborating with the city in terms of transportation, especially for after school, and providing access to our parents.
I do want to say though that we already provide tokens for students to take public transportation. I don't think that the access to public transportation in terms of cost is what is prohibiting students from taking public transportation. But we heard in other meetings that just public transportation itself and where people can actually access it might be a barrier, and that's beyond. Please, of course, yep.
Just this week, there was a celebration on Martin Luther King Boulevard. Perhaps you were there, but I was talking with the person who's in charge of transportation. And
Jim Travers.
no, not
Jim.
the one who's in charge of buses. He's actually the local buses, and he was saying that next year he has heard and accepts the criticism that people don't know where the buses are going and the times and things like that, but they're revamping it completely. And I said, well, we would be interested as a school system that it would fit our students more, and he was open to that. So I'm just saying it's definitely something reimagining better knowledge part of this thought.
That's good. Well, thank you for that, Mary Ellen. Actually, this segues nicely to the next part. We also wanted to hear what are some of the things that you're hearing, being out in the community since the last time we met. And I think that's a great example, Mary Ellen, of what you've heard. But we would also like to kind of get your feedback and input. What are some of the things that you're hearing in terms of the budget, challenges, opportunities, and so forth?
Want to include what we just heard from the folks in that last town hall we just had. I mean,
Yes.
you talked about specialized learning for preschool and perhaps adding some additional resources there. I mean, I know we've already got that up there, so that's just, but I don't know if it speaks specifically to to preschool.
She was speaking to full day programs
Right,
also. And class sizes at the preschool.
I've heard some of those same sentiments as far as at the pre-K level from the staff there.
Okay.
You know, at that school, like lack of resources and space. And just overall too, like has already been mentioned, but like teacher retention system, I hear that in the community.
And then about grants that are sunsetting. We have an incredibly effective legislature, representatives to our Hartford, to Hartford. They have been able to get more grants for us, or, you know, think in terms of education. And I am thinking that this would be a definite area of talking to them. Here we are with these grants sunsetting. We're not even asking to have a new program or to go over and above, but we're asking to be able to see what level of excellence we are providing now, which may not be enough, but it's good. It would be incredibly not right to not be able to provide that.
Okay.
So I think we can make a case, and we have 3 or 4 really good representatives that will listen if we talk to them.
On the call, the parent mentioned the playground at Kendall. I mean, I realize that's a capital item, but just for the record, I mean, we might want to just include it just so that we know.
Yeah.
To indicate the
Thank you.
playground.
I noted that because I think I have to speak to Robert Stowers,
Right.
who is heading recreation and parks, because that's not the only one that's come up. We've had some emails around the Fox Run playground also. So there's been some attention paid to the playgrounds, and it could be because some newer ones are also coming online that people are advocating for their school community.
Like the one at Flax Hill, I mean, the city just got some funding for that, so.
Exactly.
And Marvin, there's a new pre or kindergarten,
Mhm.
high school playground in Marvin.
Yeah, so I'll be sure to note that.
And also too, just to add another thing that we have already mentioned, but that keeps coming up too, is like collaborating as far as like workforce development for students, and collaborating with businesses and things in the area to offer opportunities for our students to get skills, certificates, internships, like that always comes up. And also too, in regards to when we're talking about mental health, like the school social workers caseload, more supportive services, addressing like mental health, all grades. But I think more so what comes up for me is the high school. High school level too.
It's recruiting more teachers. I saw where in the Haven schools, I saw this, they partnered with Yale and Southern to do something, so I don't know if that's something that we might want to look at in terms of being able to,
In terms of our recruitment efforts.
yeah. I don't know who we would partner with.
For staff or services?
Yeah, it was,
Staff.
yeah,
Staffing?
for teachers.
So they said, like a pipeline.
Yale and Southern, were working
Oh,
with Haven Public Schools, I think.
On that same theme of CES has put together some retention questionnaires and exit questionnaires that have been really helpful, and they're ready and able to give workshops to any, they could come here to give us workshops, or we could go there. I know Alex has been to some of their trainings recently, so just throw CES in as a resource. I'll be going to a meeting there tomorrow if there's anything you can think of.
Okay, thank you.
Thursday, I have a meeting with them.
With the thing that I just mentioned, the only thing is that it would probably be a challenge for us to do is because Yale is providing 10 million
Oh, wow.
to do that. I just looked it up because I was like, okay, how's this get paid for?
Minus.
Yale, you know, Yale equals New Haven.
I know.
So that's just, so, you know, that's.
But it's still, it's
Right.
important to note that
Right.
that partnership,
Right.
when creating those
Absolutely.
pipelines.
Absolutely.
We can aspire to.
Well, that's what we have, and so there are a couple of dates here that you'll be hearing from us and the communications team, just in terms of advocating, getting the community, and have a couple of meetings with our counterparts in the city, and so.
I just had one question for Dave. You mentioned that there would be a meeting in December, but I didn't get the date on that, and it wasn't on this chart.
I think that's the board meeting when we present
It's our board.
the recommended,
When,
the recommended budget.
Okay. Okay.
Okay. But in terms of engagement, we would want to engage
Good.
prior.
Right.
And before you leave, I just
Yes.
want to thank you again for, to me, obviously, problem solving and that continuous, the virtuous cycle of a continuous improvement that from last year, you're thinking, okay, how can we be better? And this is being better. And I think it's wonderful, and that it's the right direction. Thank
Well,
you.
thank you so much. Thank you for your feedback. Thank you.
Hi, good evening, Board of Education. Welcome to session 2. So in our last session, we shared with you how we were sort of realizing our district vision of the portrait of a graduate and how that work lives in the leadership and curriculum and instruction departments. And so in our first workshop series, we shared with you our district learning walks and how that work has been supporting our rollout of the critical thinking competency of the portrait of a graduate. In this evening session, we're going to dive into curriculum. And so I'm going to hand it off to my partner here, Stacy Bergen, who's going to kick us off.
Stacy.
Hey, good evening. Having a technical difficulty.
They were using the keypad, the keyboard.
The keyboard is errorless.
Oh,
Oh, no, it's, I'm sorry.
Okay. So good evening. So when we look at curricula and the needs of the students in terms of materials and what the teachers need for instructional supports, we think about first the curriculum funnel. And so we think about what is the scope and sequence of a course, whether, you know, it's ELA in K-2 or, you know, a math in high school. We think about how do we pace out the work that's going to be covered over a year. Then we think about like the day-to-day unit plans that are going to happen, and then down to the nitty-gritty of the lesson plans. So these, this way of looking at curriculum really allows us to have a full view of what students will be engaged with over the course of either, you know, a marking period or a full year, depending upon the course. And so when we work with teachers across the district, we think about the UBD model of thinking about how we design things. So we start out with the standards. We look at what are the skills that the students will need to be able to master by the end of that unit of study or over the course of a year. We decide what are the skills that would be most valuable that students will be able to transfer from one content area to another. And then we think about finally, in what ways are we going to assess what students will know and be able to do? So all of this thinking happens before we get down to the actual writing, but it's the writing and the revision that takes place over the course of the year that's the most meaningful work for the teachers and has a direct impact on student achievement. So this year, thus far, we have begun to already revise the units of study for grades K-12. So after each unit of study, we send out a revision form and ask teachers for feedback. They give us feedback on the units. We then think about what are the trends across those pieces of feedback, and then we make adjustments accordingly. We have a full implementation of Foundation this year in K-3. All of our schools have received training in the Foundation's literacy program. We have and are in the middle of purchasing additional novels for grades 6 through 12 to support diverse perspectives and cross-content learning. And then we're beginning to research materials in other languages to support our multilingual learner population. Now, with all of this comes some costs. So the revision work runs us around $10,000 a year to pay teachers overtime pay, either after school or during the summer. The Foundation support as teachers begin in the district or we need additional training, it's going to run us another $50,000 to think about how do we maintain and offer other opportunities for training. And then as we begin to always looking to update our novel choices in grades 6 through 12, that will run us around another $50,000 to provide those materials for our students.
Actually, the books themselves.
Books themselves.
So every student will have one.
So that every student, right? So our goal is to think about reading doesn't need to take place just in the classroom, right? The idea is that children walk out of the classroom with books in their hands, take them home and practice reading on their own, and then bringing back their deep thoughts back to school. And so we know that there's a lot of research around reading print versus reading online. And so we know the importance of having that actual text in hand for our students. And so we would like to continue purchasing additional novels for our students across the district.
Good evening. It's nice to see everyone. So up at the top, you can't see it, but it says TNTP is the title up there. And TNTP used to be the name of the organization called the New Teacher Project. They actually moved away from that name of their organization because they broadened their scope of services. So they used to focus on just new teacher support, but now they've brought into doing a variety of type of leadership support, curriculum and support, instructional support. And you heard us report out throughout last year, our focus was really on standards-based instruction, ensuring all of our students were being asked and given the opportunity to engage in standards-based, grade level appropriate text, tasks, and activities. And so we partnered with TNTP to provide some targeted support in our secondary schools, both for the school leader and the literacy coach. And while the partnership just began in the spring, they were able to immerse themselves enough in our work to then share some findings with us at the end of the year. And one of the really exciting celebrations was they saw our students were consistently being engaged, being consistently asked to read grade level appropriate texts. So regardless of any, of who the child was, they were being exposed to grade level texts. And that was a real win, and it was really a reflection of the work of our leaders, our coaches, our teachers, and of course the curriculum team that sits here tonight. Through their work and that kind of like that needs assessment and the findings, one of the things that came out is that they recommended that we bring together a coalition of district stakeholders and work on a K-12 vision of literacy. How are we defining high quality ELA literacy instructional practices across the full K-12 continuum, and making sure we have a very clear and shared understanding that's grounded in evidence-based best practices. And so we are kicking off that work in about a week. And as we engage in that work, we know that some of the findings as we develop this vision may result in us needing to consider new types of materials or resources to be able to really bring that vision of literacy to life.
And so when we consider those materials and thinking about a change that could take place from in our secondary schools, so grades 6 through 12, in the area of literacy, it could run up to a cost of $500,000, depending upon different products that are offered in the world of publishing. And so we are going to we will be beginning to speak with different companies and look at products, involve teachers and school leaders into a deep dive into what are the pros and cons of each of these products, and come hopefully to a decision for next fall.
Could you interweave a little bit the state or national standards for literacy teaching with is Vision for Literacy a name, or is that?
No, a vision of literacy. So what does Norwalk know, think, and believe about how students should engage in the literacy practices?
Mm-hmm.
So in what ways? So we know that in our K-5 schools, right, in our elementary schools, we are grounded in the science of reading. But the science of reading doesn't end at grade 5. It continues on in secondary ed. We don't just abandon the science and say like, that's malarkey and off we go, right? We think about, but students, young people, right, young adults, they need different ways of accessing the materials. And so the science of reading looks a little bit different in our 6 through 12s. So we need to think about, what do we want our students to know and be able to do when they leave us? So we're developing this like trajectory of if a child can encode and decode by the end of 1st grade, what then is our vision for that child at the end of 12th grade, right? And what are those benchmarks that are in between that will move that child across the continuum? And that links directly to our work in the Portrait of the Graduate. So we have the markers, right, within the critical thinker, the grade bands, thinking about what does critical thinking look like for our pre-K to 2nd graders, and what does it look like for our 12th graders? So the literacy piece needs to work in parallel, in conjunction with the work in the Portrait of the Graduate.
So we want to make sure that our curriculum is designed to do the thing that we want it to do to ensure that our students are meeting the expectations of our Portrait of a Graduate.
And so with that, with the critical thinking aspect in terms of literature, is part of what you see is, I'm guessing, that they read and then they write, expressing their ability of understanding and being able to critique what the themes are and how it applies to their lives and things like that. So I guess I'm wondering what I can see reinforcing what working is right now, or linking it more to Portrait of Graduate. But I'm wondering why we would need new books when aren't there?
We don't necessarily need new novels per se, right? But it would be to our advantage to really think about the students who are in front of us, right? And thinking about like audience matters and how kids see themselves in works of literature matters.
Yes.
And so we want to continue to think about, but also along with that, you can read a book, right? Like you could read a book on your own, but then when you get with a group of people, reading that book is a different experience, right? And the way in which teachers engage, right? So part of it is not just the materials, but it's thinking about like teacher training that would need to take place in order to become better instructors of literacy. And so they go hand in hand, because you can have a book and read it by yourself and have one experience, or be taken on a journey with someone who's really skilled at moving discussions around deep thinking with novels as well.
And as TNTP facilitates this work around creating this vision for literacy, they also have a lot of protocols and procedures in place that once you have this established vision, then reviewing the current materials that you have in place and identifying like, where are we seeing, okay, we are fully aligned to our vision, and where are we seeing gaps that we may need to think about. You know, some resources are better at building knowledge for students in order to support reading comprehension. And so if we're saying that's a key part of our vision, then we need to see how that is building throughout the K-12 curriculum resources. And if we're not seeing it, that's when we then need to explore what's out there. And as a partner with this, they are very well versed with what is out there. And so can speak to like, what are the strengths and what are the weaknesses? And so, they're going to help as they lead us through this vision work. They're also going to be engaging us in professional learning as a team as well, so that we're identifying like a really strong vision that then can inform our review of those materials and identifying any gaps that we might need to supplement.
I could imagine in that situation that you have a number of teachers, experienced teachers, that could be tremendous assets to share techniques. But as the system works, you're going to have new teachers coming through,
Right.
and people transferring and things like that. So it's catching.
And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that the coalition consists of a principal from each grade level, elementary, middle, and high school, a coach from each level, an MLL teacher from each level, a classroom teacher from each level, a special education teacher at each level, as well as some key members of the central office team as well. So it's a
That's
district,
good to
Yeah.
get that web.
a variety of perspectives. Absolutely.
Right now, we don't have something like this, right? We don't have something like this in place, the program that you're describing?
Well, so we have parts. We have really strong parts, right? And now the way I look at the work for creating the vision of literacy is now we have to like stitch it together and ask ourselves, like, do these parts all make sense together? Is there an extra piece that we need to add in, right? And because I think we've been really thoughtful over the last few years to be really mindful of choices that we made with regards to curriculum materials, and responding to the needs of our students and teachers, what they would like too, right? And so, but even within that, it's really important to look at a gap analysis.
Yes.
And say to ourselves, is there something else missing? And what is missing? Why is it missing? And how can we then fill that gap? Right? Because we want to know that when our students leave Norwalk Public Schools, that they are the best equipped for the world, that awaits them. And so by doing that, we have to be reflective. We ask students to be reflective and we ask teachers to be reflective, but as a central office, we also need to be reflective as well. And so part of that process is this work.
So would you say that the strongest piece you have is the science of reading K-5, and then you're expanding it?
So that's one way to look at it, right? So the science of reading is really strong in our district. We have worked really hard at implementing this program over the last 3 years. Our data is showing really nice pieces of growth, so that's really important. And now we need to think about, okay, so once they leave 5th grade, now what? Like, they just know everything and off they go, right? We want to make sure that we still then are supporting them in ways that they need to be supported to improve their cognitive processing.
And I think one of the things that I want to add, we presented, I think Dr. McBride was still in the district, work from the Equity Institute, where they did a review of our curriculum materials, particularly at the middle school level. And they found some significant gaps that we are working to address, particularly opportunities to reading whole novels, and a number of elements, school-wide was already being utilized in the district prior to my arrival. And during that time, we went through the transition of elementary schools not having curricula because the publisher had put to rest the tool that we were using, so we had to bring it in. And I think now the next layer of work that we need to do is build the curricula for the middle school. For our middle schools, so that they are better aligned to the work that we're already doing at the elementary school level on the science of reading. And also strengthening it based on the feedback that we received in that review that highlighted significant areas of improvement.
The work continuously continues.
Hi, I'm Jamie Ottaviano, and I'm excited to talk about social studies and the work that we're doing so far. And I've mentioned before in another meeting, but the state of Connecticut passed new standards last October. And we certainly adopted them. And this summer, we spent some time writing new units for K-8. And so we're at the point now where our units have been written. And we've also written multiple inquiries for every single unit. And we've integrated trade books into K-5. So for
Multiple increase?
yes, we've written, what'd you say?
I'm not sure what that means.
So in a unit, in every unit, there's an inquiry, and the inquiry takes about 7 days. And students move through this rigorous investigation. Every inquiry starts with a compelling question, and then it's grounded in questions, sources, and tasks. And so students would be looking at primary and secondary sources in every task that they do. So most of our inquiries have 3 supporting questions, but there are some that have 4. And they're really grappling with some really complex topics. And so at the end of their inquiry, there's a summative task where they have to answer the compelling question, and then they have to take informed action. So it's been great. We have one inquiry that just said, "Is it ever too late to remember?" And that's centered around the Holocaust. We have one that's on the Boston Tea Party. Is it activism or vandalism? So they're really grappling with these topics, but they're using sources to help them come to a determination and to make a claim and a counterclaim. So we're certainly moving right along, and I think teachers are really excited about the work that's happening. And for this year, we are spending around $325,000 for the resources, and next year we're really looking at about $75,000 for our multilingual learners, and really to provide the materials that they need to support them. And then we have to work with the high school teachers, and we have to build inquiries for the high school and then write new units.
So is the total just gonna be 85 next year? But the high school, that would be.
We're gonna work with the high school
As part of this?
next year. We focused on K-8 this year, and then the high school is gonna come soon.
I love those questions. Activism versus vandalism for the team.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
We're looking to factor these into the capital budget because a lot of
Into the
these
capital budget,
components
okay.
capital budget.
Now, are there other districts who are using this is it pretty standard in other districts or teams?
Which part? The increase?
Yes.
So I can tell you that Norwalk we are ahead. The standards just came out, but we didn't waste any time, and because it's good for students, and we know that. And so this way of learning is really important, and we didn't want to wait. And so we did the work. And students are really excited about the work.
And I think one of the key things is that a lot of this work also ties to the work that we're doing around the portrait of a
Yes, we
graduate.
could see that.
And it directly links to the critical thinking component that we are trying to build throughout the district. So it also provided some exemplars for our staff in terms of what the expectation is around that work as well.
One of the things I would just like to emphasize is when you're doing this and the kids are critically thinking,
They are.
that you remind them that that's what they're doing. So they can get that tie-in with the portrait that they're not just doing an assignment, they're exercising critical thinking.
Yeah, it's great because when they are doing the work, they are critical thinking is all throughout. So it's not just like there's not one pocket. You know, they're consistently analyzing and interpreting the sources that they have in front of them, and then they have to synthesize all of that information to make meaning of that. And then they have opportunities to revise their thinking along the way. And so sometimes like they vacillate depending on the sources that they have in front of them. It's really exciting for them, and they get up and move. So many great things are happening in the classroom. So we're lucky that Connecticut is actually adopting increased standards because they're the first as of right now.
And then we have math.
I'm Misty Hofer, and I'm going to talk to you about math and science. So we had some updates this year. We've been using illustrative math K through Algebra 2 for the past 4 years, and illustrative math went to now illustrative math 360 for K through Algebra 1. So they had done some additional research about updates they needed to make to that core resource, and we adopted it for this year. We really are focusing on continuing to build curriculum coherence in our mathematics. The cost that we put in for this new updated resource for this year for schools was $200,000. Next year, the 360 updates will go into high school, so it will be beyond Algebra 1, and as well as accelerated mathematics in the middle school. So we're looking for about $150,000 for next year. And then with science, we have put in a new core resource for grades 6 through 8, which we're piloting at middle schools, and the feedback around it from our middle school teachers has been overwhelmingly positive.
I have heard that in talking to some middle school teachers.
I'm really glad that you guys are hearing that too. And then we've also put some high school updates for biology, chemistry, and physics, which has been piloted at high school as well. And that's come with a lot of professional learning. It's a new resource, so the teachers needed time to spend to learn about it, to learn how it works, the instruction behind it, the materials behind it. And again, they're asking as well for really like diving now at they've kind of got their feet wet. They really want to focus on coherence and the scope and sequence and like how exactly is it going to look and build. So that's a lot of work that we're doing this year. It's been about $400,000 that we're looking to spend by the end of this year. And then for next year, based off of all the feedback we've gotten and how positive it's been, we'd like to start shifting that work into elementary. So we're looking at about $300,000 next year to help revise and revamp some of the elementary curriculum and continue to put this new resource into place.
Could you give just a couple of examples of what the project would be?
Sure, like a specific example from
Yes,
here.
6th, 7th grade.
So
what they would do, because I remember hearing from a couple teachers that the kids really liked it, and then I've just forgotten what were they doing.
So I'm not sure what you heard, but 7th grade made bath bombs, and the opening investigation was looking at the difference between a bath bomb you would buy in a store and then a bath bomb that you can create in your house, and what happens in the chemical reactions when they're put into water, and kind of what are the materials that create this chemical reaction, right? And that kickstarts the unit. So every unit is Jamie was talking about anchoring, is through an anchoring phenomenon, and then kids develop their understanding of why the phenomenon happens. So throughout the unit, they are continuously going back to that. This was what we saw at first. How does our new learning help us understand this? How does our new learning help us impact this? And it's a lot of kids are creating questions that they're investigating. Kids are doing a lot of research in order to add to their thinking and understanding. And it's really a strong resource about some of the scientific practices that we don't always spend a lot of time on, which is really the making meaning and the sense making of science.
And so this matches with Next Generation.
It's completely next gen aligned. And it has given teachers a lot more support for what they're putting in front of students, which was one of the big pieces of feedback we've gotten about our science curriculum over the past few years, is that teachers didn't get a lot of stuff it was a lot of visuals, but not a lot of hands-on.
Oh.
This has a lot more hands-on as well as simulated simulations.
And I get the last piece. Hi, everyone. I am here to just briefly talk about music and some of the updates that have been going on this year. We've been working on really updating the curriculum for band and strings in grades 3 through 12. So that work has been ongoing. We're continuing to work even now on choral music as well as our music electives, and that is really in our middle school and high school. We will also take some time to research some costs for some new risers for our choral programs in the high school, and also some new instruments that are needed, especially at the middle school level, band instruments. So we've been very fortunate that the capital budget has been able to support the high schools with those advanced and those larger instruments, which are a little bit more costly. So we've been very thankful for that. So this year, we spent about $10,000 just for the revision work, and $300,000 from the capital budget for the strings equipment, instruments. And then potential costs for next year, we're looking at maybe using some of that money for those risers for the choral programs. And then some new instruments, band instruments at high school level. There's still some things like a sousaphone that they would like. You know, we have an award-winning music program here in Norwalk, but really helping to support our middle school with some new instruments. And so that's where you see the cost for $300,000. So that's what I tried to be.
The Norwalk Hour had a front page, the band instruments, and the kids just looking so cute, holding them seriously. It just,
It's where so many of our students thrive in the arts, so we're very.
So much for them, just so much for us, it's just life-giving.
Absolutely. It's just for some of it. Somebody had asked me about that at the workshop, the first one we did. They said, oh, we already got, money, we already got.
It covered a good amount of it, but like we still are short some areas. And our middle schools have not been updated. I mean, you think $300,000 is a lot, but when you're talking about really costly equipment, it only goes so far. So in order for us to fully bring up to date all of our high school instruments, we're gonna need another $100,000. And then to start the process at the middle school level, we need $300,000 for next
Because we
year.
primarily did high school.
We only did high
Really did
school.
high school.
Yeah.
Any
Any additional questions? So we're gonna start transitioning to the next group. Thank you guys. I don't know if we're doing the like, pizza, so I don't know.
Oh, my goodness, I just want to know that grab a little piece of pizza if you.
Brenda, do we have?
No, we're going over there now.
Let me look.
Put a little ice, there's none of.
There's none up here, no. Then no,
But downstairs.
kitchen is over here, no?
There's no refrigerator downstairs?
Let me go look. Here.
Yeah, we don't have ice up here.
No,
I want ice. Love ice.
we need to get one of those little portable.
I know.
No, you guys are staying.
They're coming.
No, they're coming to you.
Wait, but I need
Did you
to
get your
move.
pizza stuff?
I still, I don't know, piece left.
You bring 2 chairs.
Okay.
No.
All right, so I think we'll get started. Last month, we talked a lot about staffing. We talked a little bit about out-of-district costs and components tied to out-of-district. We talked really just looking overall at special education, and tonight we're going to really dive into our programs, our specialized programs that have been built in district. Looking at a timeline of how they developed over time. We're going to do some comparisons to an in-district program versus an out-of-district program. We're going to look at numbers of students that we serve in these programs. And the other piece is we're going to look at a fictitious person who is in a program, but then is outplaced, and the difference between the two. It's a story, and you'll see some connections between that, because I'm hoping that you'll be able to see some through lines through some very specific programs. I'll just reintroduce. We have Deirdre McKinnon, who's our ed admin for pre-K 5, and Veronica Livingston, who's our ed admin for 6 through 21. I have to say through 21 because Veronica really, yes, but as a legal standpoint, we say 21. Oh, but it is to the end of
June after they turn 22.
June after they turn 22. But it,
How does that legal thing go that?
It's too much.
Go ahead, Veronica.
So it is still in fact age 21. But initially it was the day before their 21st birthday years ago. Then it was June after they turned 21 because we wanted to give them a full school year. Then it became the day before they turned 22 because now they're not 21 anymore. And then it was determined that that was too disruptive to their programming. So now it's June after they turn 22 to make sure that they are not 21 and that we have not in fact disrupted their programming during that final school year. So it is still really 21, but the iteration of it and the iteration of the understanding of the law and the interpretation has led us to us meeting the state to educate them until June after they turn 22, which provides them enormous amounts of opportunities. But the how and the why is why we still say 21. Because otherwise, if we say 22, then it's June after they turn 23.
Say 21.
21.
That impacts.
It's all very good things. It's just a matter of the why.
Impacting our budget.
But I don't want to impact it more.
Year one of that law going into place, it cost the district an extra $700,000. So just to give some context to that shift was a substantial cost for districts across the state.
Okay. So, as Rob has explained tonight we're going to go over programming and specifically our specialized programs that we are offering within the district. And the reason that we have spent so much time focusing on developing specialized programs within the district is because of the benefits to our students. One of the primary ones is that it allows us to address individual needs within neighborhood and community schools, which really hits on that least restrictive environment, which we always go over at every PPT meeting. And it really allows us to check that box of, yes, they are in their least restrictive environment because they're being educated in their home district where their family resides. There is a savings per pupil as compared to comparable tuition-bearing programs, which we will get into as we move further through the slides. It provides opportunities for us to serve students with similar profiles in district, as opposed to if you're sending them out of district, they could be at 5 or 6 different schools. And now we're able to really monitor and educate them with similar profiles here, which allows us to have better control over the situation. It creates advantages for their peers to develop empathy and really understand how to interact with and live with students, peers who are different. And we're always looking for that angle of diversity and understanding diversity. And this is just another way for us to embed that within the schools. It increases teachers' opportunities to build capacity with diverse learners.
It attracts individuals from outside of district to enroll in our programs. There are opportunities for us to charge tuition. We see it more now in our transition programs, but it's a goal of ours for our other in-district programs as well. And it gives us the opportunity to partner with families to provide them training and support so that they can generalize the education that we're giving their student in the classroom into the home, helps with managing behaviors within the home and just furthering that learning once they're not in school. And last but not least, it creates a standard or model for neighboring towns. We've had other towns come in and look at our programming to see how we do it. The state does reach out to us periodically to ask how we're doing things and to really provide us accolades to other districts. Look at what Norwalk's doing. You should be doing that too. And then hopefully one day the nation will be coming and looking at us too. So these are all reasons why we focus.
Giving national
They're ready to
addresses.
So the next slide shows the actual timeline from 2016 when we first started until 2024. So I mean, just as you could see, we have developed so many programs, so many specialized programs over the years that have let us keep our students in district, not have to send them out of district. We have continually added co-teaching classes, and this year for 2024, we were able to add a specialized program, a Triumph class at Nathan Hale. We were able to add co-teaching classes again at Jefferson and at Kendall. A third LEAP class for grades K through 2, and the pre-K through 5 class at Fox Run. So it's we have been able to develop these programs over the years. They're just excellent.
So the pre-K through 5 at Fox Run, that doesn't have a special name, it's just
pre-K 5.
Just pre-K 5 right now. It doesn't have a special.
I spent a lot of time coming up with Triumph, so.
Okay.
I mean, pre-K 5 transition, but then it kind of gets muddy with transition, so.
I have a moratorium on using that word anywhere
Yeah, we
else.
wanted to kind of keep away from transition, so.
So then on the next two slides is kind of our district program glossary, which, we use a lot of acronyms when we go through our timeline. So we wanted to be able to explain to you a little bit more what the programs are. So our poorly named pre-K 5 is actually a half-day program for students who turned 5 on or after September 1st. There's a typo in this slide and we will get that fixed. But not after January 1st. So it's between September and January. They've turned 5. Parents have the opportunity and the choice to enroll their child in this program. It's a general education classroom where we are meeting their IEP needs. So it's a program that we've developed at Fox Run for that specific purpose.
And this just ask, how is that related to NECC?
It's not at NECC, so it's not, it's at.
So with the new law that was passed last year.
Right.
That says that students that their birthday falls after September 1, but before January, that they could start kindergarten, or they would start kindergarten later. There are families who have said, okay, we don't want to start kindergarten this year because their birthday, they could, if they wanted, they could start like by filling out the application. They would come to the family center, they would be given the ASQ, which is the existing stages questionnaire, and then we would develop a plan for them in kindergarten. But families have been able to say, well, I'm going to give my child another year before they start kindergarten. And so a student who is receiving services, we developed a program for them because we still have to provide services, and NECC so developed this program in one of our schools. And so one of the key pieces is that if families choose, they can stay at Fox Run and go to Fox Run, so they don't have to switch schools. And it's been a successful implementation this year. When you build a new program, there's some initial costs because you're developing classroom and materials and all of those components, but that's really where this was derived from. There was a need because students and families wanted to wait a year to start kindergarten based on the new law.
So this is in a general education classroom?
It is.
And is it kind of a 50-50 thing or?
That's always our goal.
Oh,
And
right now, it's
are you able
it's
to
not
utilize that?
right now.
It's not at 50-50 right
Um,
now. No, I think
Most of
it's,
the students.
I think it's
do
75%,
IEPs, yeah.
yeah. 75% are with students with IEPs.
With or without?
With,
So you can do an IEP with a 3 or 4-year-old with a preschool?
once they turn 3.
Okay.
Once they turn 3, they will come and register and then we'll go through the evaluation process. And that's what happens through NECC.
Right.
So like, that's why NECC's enrollment shifts throughout
Right.
the year, because once we hit January, we start to see as students start to turn 3, they're
Right.
going to.
Do you have to do an IEP every year with a student, right, to reassess where they're?
Every year we do an annual review and then every 3 years is the reevaluation process. So if they're 3, then when they turn 6 is when we start looking at what their disability categories would be.
And just to go back to that a little bit, the 75%, what strategies are we using to try to get it closer to the ideal of 50-50?
I think this year, one of the pieces that happened is a lot of families, because they were so used to it, registered for kindergarten. So we didn't have a lot of families whose children turned 5 after September 1st that wanted to wait a year. Because families could still register.
Right.
Like, we made it available to the community that if you wanted to start kindergarten, that you would put in a request, would take the ASQ here at the Family Center, and then you could go to kindergarten.
So the commonality of all those just turned 5-year-olds is that they're at a certain age. It's and then some of them are general students with some other special needs. Okay.
Guys, that capacity, because I imagine with you've got room.
That classroom is not capacity. But it is
It's a half day.
half day.
I mean, like your whole big pre-K to 5, though, right? Okay, never mind. I got it.
It's not at capacity yet, it's a half day program, so we still have some spots in the AM and then some spots.
And I guess during the IEP, that's when you, or during the PPT is when you make a determination about whether or not we even have capacity to serve that child, right? Because you could have a student who we don't have the capacity to serve.
We're required to
Right.
serve.
Required to.
I mean, but I mean that they may have to go elsewhere. I know we have to serve them. I just mean you might not have the capacity for that particular, whatever their service needs are, you know, right? Can't always, I know we talked about having it here to save money, but sometimes there's issues that we
Right,
don't
maybe
have.
team
Make that determination. Right, gotcha.
The next one is ICT, which is our integrated co-teaching. That is a core classroom where a general education and a special education teacher are teaching simultaneously. There's several different ways to do that, but the idea is that they are together. And at the elementary school level, that special ed teacher and that gen ed teacher spend the entire day together. It's a little bit different at the middle and high school level because of subjects and prep periods and things like that. But for the purposes of what we're talking about today, at the elementary level, ICT is full-time special ed and general education teacher working together, planning together, teaching together with typically a 50-50 split in the classroom. That is our goal.
That's
Yes. Our next specialized program is LEAP, which stands for Learners Excelling and Progressing. And that is an applied behavior analysis based classroom for students with autism. And the focus is on academic and communication skill development with some behavior support that's embedded using those ABA principles. And that is at the elementary school level. We have 3 of those classrooms. The next one is our Literacy Academy. And that is direct explicit instruction in reading and math and writing. It's primarily for students with dyslexia or language-based learning disabilities. We use Orton Gillingham strategies, and it is highly structured and multisensory. And the accommodations that are developed within that PPT on that IEP are also offered in other general education core classes. And this program is supported by our Orton Gillingham associate and a speech language pathology assistant who is in that classroom.
So they basically get 90 minutes specialized math, 90 minutes specialized reading, and then they get co-taught a science and a social studies with the SLPA.
Yes,
Where is Literacy Academy?
Narrowman. Grades 4 and 5.
And then our STARS program is our Successful Transitions Achieved Through Responsive Support. And that is intensive instruction by a special education teacher with integration into the general education setting to develop academic foundation and communication skills. And our STARS classrooms are at the elementary and middle school level, and they tend to have a feeder pattern into our practical skills classes at the high school, which will then feed into either Norwalk Next Steps or one of our project search classes if transition skills are determined to be needed after they complete their high school programming. We have talked about I've had the opportunity to talk about Norwalk Next Steps and Project Search with you guys a lot, that those are our transition programs. So I will not go over those with you at length again tonight. But the practical skills class, which is embedded right between the two of those on the slide, that's our high school functional skills classes for reading and math, career readiness, and self-determination. We expose them to adapted and individualized core curriculum. That should say commensurate, not commiserate, commensurate with students' abilities.
Good.
And again, we typically have a trajectory of hoping that they will be able to graduate high school and then go off into a field of their choosing. But if they require additional transition skills, we have the opportunity to provide those within our transition programs. Success is our intensive DBT classroom, and we have those at the elementary school at Tracy Elementary, at Roten Middle School, and also at Brian McMahon High School. We have a total of 5 classrooms. And that uses our dialectical behavior therapy model. We partner with Cognitive Behavior Therapy out of New York, and they do bi-monthly support sessions with our staff for troubleshooting and things like that. But we have mental health professional and BCBA services embedded in that, along with our special ed teachers and our registered behavior technicians. And then last but not least is our newest program, which is Triumph, which is for students primarily entering grade 6, and it is at Nathan Hale. And that program is highly individualized and focuses on functional academic skills, functional communication skills, and development of self-care and self-management skills. These students are, their cognitive profile is a little bit different than our STARS classroom. So there's a higher level of ability there, but there's more of a need for developing appropriate social skills, developing additional independence, and then we also provide some community opportunities for them to go out into the community. Swimming, they do swimming at Angelfish adaptive swimming at Angelfish once a week. It is. I can't stress enough that how individualized this program is for this cohort of 7 students who really just had such a unique need, but happened to all be within the same age range, that we were able to develop this program Deirdre was able to develop this program for these students.
So you were excited about it.
Oh, yes.
Really.
Yeah.
Very excited.
It's an awesome program. Okay, so this slide just outlines how many students we have to have in our programs. So the ICT that is showcasing grades K through 5. So as you can see, it goes from the 21-22 school year all the way to the 24-25 school year. So we started off with 22 students, and right for this school year we have 91.
That's with the addition of all of those classes.
Right, because we were able to add one more every year. We only started off with 1 class back in 21-22, so there were 12, and now we do have 3 classes. So 29 students are in those classes now. So this really shows you how many students, we have been able to keep in district. A lot of these students would have been able to go out of district if we were not able to keep them in district. So it just shows you, how great our programs are, and we have to keep on developing them.
Can I ask you a question? So the 7 at Nathan Hale, is that just because that particular group of students are identified with that particular need to be in that program? I guess my question is, what about the other middle schools, West Rocks? They don't have
So
that program or?
this program connected with students from across the district.
Okay.
Right, so other schools.
Others, so they would come there, so it could be somebody in the
Correct.
West, okay,
Yeah,
gotcha.
Nathan Hale
House
wasn't,
there.
Gotcha.
yeah, it's just housed there.
It's housed there.
Not just for students who are going to Nathan Hale. If a student had,
Right.
met, I would say the criteria,
Right,
then
they're gonna go there,
They
and
would
there's
go.
transportation provided. Correct. Gotcha.
100%. So one piece that I want to highlight is outside of staffing, all of our programs also bring in other type of supports. So when we're looking, I'm going to use the LEAP as an example. We have a partnership with the Practical Skills Clinic. It's an external CPA who comes in and can support the programs. And so that's just an example for the Success Program. We talked about cognitive behavior therapy, which is built in to support the staff in their capacity. And so each program has different partnerships. For Project Search and Next Steps, we're partnered with Ability and Beyond, who's directly across the street on East Avenue. And so these are components that really help make our programs be even more successful, because they bring in extra external supports and expertise and whatever's needed to help develop.
Rob, one on this LEAP or any one of them, when they have, for example, 29 students, does that mean there are 2 classrooms?
That case for LEAP, there's 3 classrooms.
We have
3 classrooms?
Yeah, we try to keep the numbers somewhere between 10 and, depending on which program it is, 10 or 12 students.
And then let's say it's smaller, it could be even 1 classroom. Does that mean that could be multi-age classes?
So LEAP is K-2, 3 to 5.
Okay.
And then we have that, and then Kendall is K-2.
K-2.
Yeah.
So it is multi-age class.
Yeah.
Correct.
Mhm.
So one piece that we wanted to highlight, and I presented around specialized learning the last few years, and this isn't something that we have done or I have done. So I'm hoping that you'll find some value, is we have 3 LEAP classrooms. And the cost of running a LEAP classroom or developing a LEAP classroom, and we created a new LEAP classroom this year because we had a need for it. And it roughly for staff costs around $650,000. So just to give some context, it is just for staff. This doesn't include transportation. This doesn't include if you're starting, if you need like furniture or materials. This is just a staffing cost. So just to give that context. Now, I ended up looking at one of our external programs, outplacement programs, that we would send a student who's in the LEAP classroom. It costs $160,000 for that student for a year. So if we had 10 students and we didn't have a classroom in district, chances are that the student would be outplaced to meet their needs. And so it costs us $646,000 for that classroom. However, if we were to outplace them, it would cost us $1.6 million per year. And just that cost doesn't include transportation either. So it's apples to apples. I wanted to make sure I was able to share something that is like, well, that includes this and that includes that. So there is a just a a chart to be able to show the difference between programs. That I know opening up a LEAP classroom, it's expensive. $650,000 is a lot of money, but without it, it could cost more than double that. And then I wanted to take another program that we have, and that's our success program. And we have 5 success programs in the district, 2 in elementary, 1 in middle, and 2 in high school. And the cost of a success program is $406,000. And I wanted to be able to show a comparison. I selected one program. It's probably a lesser expensive program that we partner with that costs $88,400 for the student. For one student for 1 year.
So that's on the higher end.
No, that's on the lower end.
That's the lower end.
That's on the lower end.
Okay.
I actually had someone say, well, why did you pick that program?
It's
And I wanted to be
88,000, is that what you just said?
88,400.
Oh, I see, yes, because we can go up to
Correct.
200.
Yeah.
You could, depending on placement.
I was thinking,
But
you said
Even
880.
even if all 10 students went to that program at 88,400, it costs $884,000. And it costs us $400,000 to have that classroom in district, so it's half. And that's on the low end, because
That is on
not every student would go to a program that costs $88,000. But I wanted to be able to share that is a cost benefit of out of district programs, just so that you can see what some of our programs cost to run. But then if we didn't have them, it could potentially cost the district.
Exactly, that's a really good one. That, side by side is a really good way to explain that. Because I've seen at budget time, people, why are you doing this? We put some money out there, why doesn't it reduce our costs now? And it is, but it's reducing a potential cost.
But I think it's like, it's not fixed. They think it's gonna, right? I think their sense is that, well, we have a program in-house and it's gonna stay at one flat level, and that's not gonna happen depending on what the students issue get. It's gonna change.
It's gonna change. Contractual costs increase every year. And a lot of the programs are not yet at full capacity because they are still in development.
Right.
So as we continue to grow the programs K-12, there are gonna be incremental costs associated with it too.
So those 3rd graders are gonna be 4th graders.
Correct,
Will be
and
a new
that's
cost.
how you will build the program. But I think the most important thing to keep in mind is that if we were privately educating these students, we would be paid significantly more than servicing them in-house.
And we're gonna come back to the LEAP program in a little bit, but I did want to show the increased private placement costs. So I picked 6 of our programs that we have students who go out of district, and looked at them over the last 3 years. And if you were to look, so that's Site 1. Site 1 increased from $127,000 2 years ago per student to $159,000 this year. It's a 27% increase in the cost. We have a lot of districts in Connecticut. The state of Connecticut is looking at the number of students outplaced across the district and trying to brainstorm solutions. I know one district has tripled their number of students in out-of-district placements. And so you can imagine the financial costs of that over the last few years. But I just wanted to be able to highlight this idea of every single one of those programs has gone up. Site 4, it went from right around 105,000 to 129,000. So we had an increase there. Even the ones that look just very minimal, it's still roughly around a 10% increase over 2 years, which it's a lot of money. And that's only for one student. So you have to constantly think, okay, we have this student and now it's gone up X amount of dollars. So as we plan the budget, we don't know exactly what their increase is going to be. So we try to predict because we don't want to under project because that could hurt us as well. So we try to like say, what's the 7%, 10% increase so that we know that.
And when they give you those numbers, there's no wiggle room. It's not like you can say, well,
You
you
can't
know, right, it is what it is.
We're not negotiating.
Right, yeah, you can't negotiate. I'm saying that for the record because this is important for when you have discussions with the city, make sure that Mr. Osmani has this slide.
And so there's 6 options of out of district placement.
No, there's a lot of options.
A lot of options.
Yes, I just used 6 as an example and I didn't want to put specific.
Yeah, the approved private special education list is pages and pages and pages long.
Really?
Yeah.
And some of them might not even be in the state.
Right, yeah, I mean, Connecticut produces a list for who's approved for within the state, but yeah, I mean, there are. Yeah, you could be out in the quiet corner, we don't send kids out there, it's too far away for them to
Oh,
send
we
the bus
would
for them.
have
Hours to get there.
Application for 2 hours there.
We try to keep an hour radius,
Okay.
which could be 15 miles, given traffic, but we try to keep them on a,
So that's how we would choose where.
Well, we use a lot of factors because it depends on the student's need.
the profile of the student.
Correct.
Sorry. All the time together. The distance, you know, how to travel time, things like that, and if it's a highly specialized program, you may have to weigh some of those things, but yeah, but there's much more than 6, Rob picked the 6 that we tend to work with more often, or that were illustrative of.
It was just more of just to be able to highlight, I could have put a lot more there.
But no, it was helpful for me because I was under the pressure that there weren't many options. I'm like, oh, 6 seems like, oh, there's 6 options to place students, but you're saying there's even more.
Oh, yeah.
There's even more.
Yes.
And a lot of places unfortunately have a waiting list, and so then, and you get in, one of my frustrations, and I wanna be able to say it, because I think it's important, is that we have worked with sites. They have taken one of our students, we pay a tuition, and then they exit the student, say we're not gonna do that. And they can do that.
Oh, really?
Cause they have so many students on their waiting list, they, you know.
And so then we are stuck now trying to find another place.
That could happen in December.
It could happen at any time.
Time.
And it's very frustrating.
Oh, my gosh. And they keep the money?
No, we would only pay until
Oh,
they
right,
got there anyway.
Yeah, there's
No,
contracts.
if we have a contract and if they were exited out of their program, then we would stop payment.
But on the flip side, you can be notified at any moment that you have a student or 2 or 3 coming
Oh, yeah.
to you that will require.
It gets to be very it gets to be very tricky because it's disruptive for students.
Yeah.
That's number one for me. It's just disruptive for families. And so it just really is, can be a disruption.
Do we ever, we identify a student that we can't service and we place them out of district? Do we ever receive them back and now
Absolutely.
we can now service them?
Yes.
Okay.
That's the goal.
Requires
That's the goal.
Always,
Okay.
it's always the goal.
Okay.
So this is a case study. It's not a real student, but I'm gonna give you a little story here.
Okay.
Okay.
So this is a student that has been in, say, the LEAP classroom. We had 8 students in the classroom. So if you look at the green bars, that's what it would cost us to educate the child. It would be roughly $80,000, and that's in 3rd grade, versus an outplacement that would cost $167,000.
Isn't it great? I remember.
So if you were to follow that student from third grade all the way through 12th grade, looking at, we use 7% as our out of district increase. And so that is substantial over time. And so you start at 167,000, but by the time we get to the end of 12th grade, it's 300,000 if it continues to rise the way that it has been rising. And this, if you look at in-district costs, by the time they're in 12th grade, it costs us 110,000. So in the beginning, there's an $86,000 difference. But then by the end, there is about $196,000 difference. And that's over those 10 years that you see the cost. Every year, there will be savings in that difference. So that's why we want to be able to develop programs that can support students in district to meet their needs versus having to outplace a student. There are times that we do because our job is to meet their needs. But this just shows the variance in cost over time. It's not, it's just looking, we picked one program and we picked, like we said, this classroom, this many students, what is the cost? We used the $646,000 that we used in the earlier slide on what it costs and divided it by 8 to get to the number. And it really shows over time what it could cost and what it would cost in district.
Harsh.
So when we do have to send a student out of district, which, it does happen, sometimes. We currently have 89 students that are placed outside, placed through an actual PPT. So we had to send 89 students out of district through an actual PPT. Right now we have 0 students pending placement, which is awesome. Settlements, we currently have 20 settlements right now, which come from a family that actually filed due process and we have to go through that process. So we have 20 settlements. Pending resolution, we only have 1, which is great. Which kind of shows you that we don't have a lot of due process claims at this time. And we have 10 settlements that are ending at the end of 24-25 school year, and we have 1 student that will be aging out. So 11 will be ending at the end of the 24-25 school year.
And then this particular slide is one that we had presented to you last time we saw you, but the numbers that we presented to you then were as of October 1 of the previous year. And now we have our October 1 poll for this year with the data. So we wanted to update the slide to show that we went from 93 students outplaced through PPT last year down to 89 this year. Between October 1 of last year and October 1 of this year, we did go from 9 settlements to 20 settlements. But as Deirdre said, we do expect 11 of them to fall back off at the end of the year. With due process, things can carry over from year to year. And we do run the risk of having, without having the in-district programs that we need, we run the risk of having to go through due process and potentially to have settlement cases, which is why you do see the fluctuation from year to year where the numbers do change a bit. But we did want to make sure that we were able to update last month's slide with the most current information, which includes year to date, exactly what was happening on October 1st. So we added that extra bar at the end.
Just one question on it. How, when the settlement ends, is that an age thing or is that what is the?
It's really more just the language of whatever settlement contract has been completed. Typically, what we do try to do at the end of the settlement year or time period or whatever it is we work with the family to see if there's a way, if we've developed programs during the time that the child's been out, we now have a program that we can bring them back to. We have seen students come back from settlement to do our transition programming. We've had students come back to district because we've been able to provide them the services they need within our success program. So the settlements that end, we really count them as ending at the, not to be redundant, but at the end of that settlement contract, because we make every effort to, during that timeframe, develop programming or improve whatever service it was that caused them to go out, so that at the end of the settlement, we can say, we have the ability to do this. And I do see a lot at the high school level, students want to come back because they want to walk with their peers at graduation. And that's a really big drive for a lot of our students, is they want to be back with their peers. And if they've made the gains that they needed to make, and we have the programming to support them, we are able to bring them back at this, particularly at the high school level. We do it at all levels, but the high school level, and then, like I said, that transition is a really key time where we're able to end that and bring students back. And then the age out, it happens to just be luck of the draw, depending on the students and whether or not they've turned 21 and then 22 and then June. So.
Questions? We interrupted you throughout, so you're good.
Yeah.
No, I appreciate it. Those are all great questions.
Thank you. So, I want to thank the board for, engaging in this process, and, I hope that it gave you some context about some of the work that has been happening. But also like, thinking about some of the cost savings of some programs that we have created, and some, context around the difference between in-district service versus out-of-district service, and how we are saving, but also looking at our programs across the continuum, some of the things that we have been able to accomplish either with local capital dollars, and the goals that we have in planning forward for this upcoming school year, and some of the asks that we will probably potentially be integrating into the capital and local budget. I'll turn this over now to.
Well, thank you. Thank you, everyone, for all the information. It was very eye-opening. There's a lot we still need to move forward in a positive way. Next item on the agenda is public comments. I don't know, Ralph, is there anybody online that would like to make a public comment?
No. Just, let's go.
All right. Well, with that being said, I wanted to thank everybody for being here, the whole team, my colleagues, and can I have a motion to adjourn? Ashley, seconded by Mary Ellen. Good night. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Can I see, all